رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي واجعل لي وزيرا من أهلي. السلام عليكم. Okay, before I tell you what is that one thing that we all human beings know intuitively within our nature, but I believe very few people actually practice it. Maybe 99% know it and only 1% practice it. To enjoy the beauty of what I'm about to tell you, just look at this beautiful miracle of the Qur'an. If you understand this, you will easily understand what I'm about to tell you. This linguistic miracle of the Qur'an is very simple. This is about the story of Zakaria. When Zakaria was in his old age and his wife had become barren, she couldn't bear children. At that time, God gave him the good news of his son, of an offspring, but he needed a sign from his Lord that actually he's going to have an offspring, because it was a very great news. He was old, his wife was barren, how could he have a child? He wanted a sign from God that he's going to have a child. So when he asks for a sign, this is that story. It's I am going to compare two places in the Quran where the story is narrated. This is the first place. This is chapter number 3, Surah Ali Imran, verse number 41. Which says, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Zakaria said, "My Lord, grant me a sign." He said, "Your sign is that you will not be able to speak to people for 3 days. Days meaning the opposite of night, the daytime. For 3 days, except through gestures." This is in Surah Ali Imran. But in Surah Maryam, chapter number 19, verse number 10 says, when Zakaria asked for a sign, Zakaria said, "My Lord, grant me a sign that I'm going to have offspring." He responded, "Your sign is that you will not be able to speak to people for 3 nights despite being healthy." Now this is seemingly a contradiction in the Quran. In Surah Al-Imran it says you will not be able to talk to people for 3 days, but in Surah Maryam it says 3 nights. Now what is where does the solution lie? This is a contradiction, and the beautiful answer, the miracle of the Quran lies in its eloquent speech in the context. And now let's see the context. If you go to Surah Al-Imran where it says 3 days, you go to verse number 39 and you see where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives him the good news of John, Yahya. Look at the depth and the greatness of the news. It says, Allah gives you, the angels call out to him, Allah gives you good news of the birth of John, who will confirm the word of Allah and will be a great leader, chaste and a prophet among the righteous. Such a big, great news from Allah. It's a very big news. It's Allah will give you, he's a word of Allah, John is a word of Allah, he will be a great leader, chaste, a prophet. This is a very big news. But in Surah Maryam where it says 3 nights, look at the news. The news is, Allah will give you the good news of the birth of a son whose name will be John, a name we have not given to anyone before. That's it. This is the depth of the greatness of the news. Here it's not very great of a news, whereas in Surah Al-Imran it's a very great news. So many signs of John. He will be word of Allah, leader, chaste, prophet among the righteous. Now see the relevance of the greatness of the news with the greatness of the sign. Here where the news is greater, the sign is you will not be able to talk to people for 3 days. Now I ask you, is it more normal for us to talk to people during the daytime or during the night time? Especially at that time when there were no light bulbs, etc. People used to go to sleep at night. People normally go to sleep at night, right? They're not engaged with each other. So it's normal to talk to people during the daytime. So not being able to talk to people during the daytime is a greater sign than not being able to talk to people during the night time. And thus, where it says 3 days, it is a greater news. It's a greater sign that you would not be able to talk to people for during the daytime. Where the news is not as great as it was in the previous verse, it says only we're gonna give him a name of John. So at that time the sign is also not as great. 3 nights. At night you normally don't talk to people, right? The second difference is it's explicitly stating so many signs. He will be the word of God, or he will be great leader, chaste, prophet among the righteous. Explicitly exposing his signs, clearly showing, which is more relevant to the daytime where you can see everything. Everything is right in front of you during the daytime, so explaining the signs. At night time, not so many things are clear, so just a simple statement, his name will be John, not a name not given to anyone before. That's it. Also, the greatness can be seen through God directly telling him, remember remember your Lord often and glorify him during the morning and the evening. It's as though it's a direct command from God, but in Surah Maryam it's not a direct command. In Surah Maryam, he says to his people, he came out to his people from the sanctuary, signaling them to glorify Allah, right? Not very direct. And then a beautiful thing where it says 3 days in Surah Al Imran. It says you will be talking to them through gestures. What are gestures? Physical gestures. You have to see them. Because gestures, they need to be visible. That's why it says 3 days. But Surah Maryam, it says he came out to his people from the sanctuary, signaling. The word wahi is used. Wahi means something secretly signal. A secret signal is more relevant to night time, which is where things are hidden. Subhanallah, you see where it uses everything in the context is relevant to the daytime. When it says night, everything in the context is relevant to night time. Subhanallah. And now you might say there's a contradiction. No, it's not a contradiction. It's only a completion of the story, a part of the story being told. Here it says 3 days. One might say 3 days as in 1 day today, then the next daytime would be like 1 month later. No, this story completes is telling us it's 3 consecutive days, meaning day night in or succession, one after the other. The second thing is, here you might say in Al Imran it says you will not be able to speak to the people for 3 days. Someone might think he has become ill, or he has some disease that he cannot speak. Surah Maryam says despite being healthy. So it completes the story, telling him that he has no sickness, it's just a sign from God. Subhanallah, it's just a completion. That's what my point is. I'll make 3 points now. The first point is the answer to the question, what is the thing that most people know but they don't act upon? Speaking in the right place, or doing actions and speaking in the right place in the right time. They know they must say the right words in the right place, the right time, appropriately, but most people fail, and that is why they end up fighting amongst each other, within families, within politicians, within countries, within nations. When you say the wrong thing in the wrong place, that's when you don't create the effect you want in the right context. When you don't say the right thing, most of us know we should say the right thing, but how many of us actually succeed in doing that? That's the first lesson we learn from here, which we cannot learn simply by knowing the general message of the Quran, but looking deeper into it. The second thing is, and this is a very big point, because if you don't say the right thing in the right place, you cannot have the right effect on the people as we should have. The second thing is, those people who memorize the Quran, they should know that these differences are not something that make the Quran difficult, but these should push you to go deeper into the Quran, deeper than just the memorization, because these differences bring out the beauty and the miracles of the Quran. Just like previous nations were given prophets who brought the miracles, Jesus bringing the life from death, or Moses turning the staff into the snake. Those were miracles that we can't see now, but what we can see is by going deep into the book, we can see the miracles, because no prophet is now to come. And the third thing is, it's not related to this, but it's something that came to my mind. Some people have this objection: the Quran brings in the same stories from the past. Those were in the Bible, the Old Testament, New Testament, or even the stories of the past, the Quran copies them. This is not actually an objection. This actually is itself a miracle of the Quran. You know why? You say the Quran is copied. What should the Quran do? Should the Quran go back in time, change history, or should the Quran just narrate false history? Of course, if it's in the previous books, the Quran will narrate the same stories, because the Quran is not changing the history. This alludes to the truthfulness of the Quran. It's not lying. It's giving the same history. It's not changing history. And secondly, this points to it's a miracle of the Quran. The Quran not only narrates history, but it narrates so miraculously everything in its context. Subhanallah, you just saw this. So may Allah give us a complete conviction in the Quran as the word of God. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik.